today. $100,000 to debate Democratic presidential candidate and anti-vaxxer Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on his podcast. Is this even a debate worth having? I mean, I've had Dr. Hotez on this program many times, and he was one of so many experts in the field of virology and so on who helped the public get through the COVID pandemic. But what do you think? Should he do that kind of a debate?
No, he should absolutely not. And I would say Dr. Peter Hotez is a lifelong public servant. He worked in a low-cost vaccine for developing countries. The man has devoted himself to science. He's a pediatrician. He is an incredibly good man. We both know him. RFK Jr. is a crank and an anti-vaxxer. And we all know why these very wealthy tech bros are pumping him up at the last minute, because they know, or they're pretty sure, that Republicans are going to nominate a very unelectable candidate in general. It's very possible they'll elect Trump. They'll nominate Trump. And then they are trying anything they can to prevent Biden from getting reelected. And so they're propping up this third-party candidate. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is what's happening, and it's really, really clear. I mean, you listen to RFK Jr., the stuff he says, it doesn't even make any sense. And there's no reason that Dr. Peter Hotez should even bother with it. He's elevating him by debating him.
All right, guys. So I find it hilarious that the biggest story over the Juneteenth holiday weekend has absolutely nothing to do with black people, right? And everything to do with the fact that, once again, the left is showing us how authoritarian they are, that they do not believe in freedom of speech, that they do not believe in discussion and debate of ideas out in the open and letting the public, aka me and you, decide what they want to believe. And look no further than this story involving woke vaccine doctor Peter Hotez and RFK Jr. Okay, now I did a video about this yesterday. If you guys want a full breakdown of that situation and what's happening, you can watch that video. But to make a long story short, RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., went on Joe Rogan's podcast to discuss his candidacy for president. Okay, he's running against Joe Biden in the Democrat primary. And by the way, I have to mention this because it really rubs me the wrong way, that Joe Rogan is willing to platform progressives like Bernie Sanders, Tulsi, Andrew Yang, RFK. I'm not necessarily sure if I would say he's a progressive, but he's willing to platform presidential candidates on the left side of the aisle, but he won't have Trump, who's on the right side of the aisle, because apparently he doesn't want to affect the outcome of presidential elections. But again, he's more than willing to platform Democrats and leftists. I think Joe Rogan should be called out for that. I really do. I think that's not, I don't really like that. But anyways, that's another video for another day. He went on Joe Rogan's podcast and he just happened to discuss vaccines. And RFK's opinion on vaccines are controversial, and he's called a whack job and a quack for simply having opinions that are outside of the mainstream narrative. Now, Dr. Peter Hotez, who has had run-ins with RFK Jr. in the past, decided to take to Twitter to retweet, okay, and to support an article that was written basically criticizing Spotify for not enforcing their vaccine misinformation policy, right? Because we haven't learned during the pandemic that, the actual misinformation about the vaccine came from the establishment, right? They were the ones actually putting out misinformation, okay? They told us it was science, but it was actually misinformation. Regardless, right? That sparked a huge Twitter conversation that happened to involve Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, Dr. Peter Hotez, and RFK Jr. because Joe Rogan invited Peter Hotez to come to his show on his podcast and debate RFK Jr. on vaccines, since Peter Hotez believes that RFK Jr. is wrong on vaccines, right? That sounds like a pretty reasonable request. Peter Hotez has been on Joe Rogan's show. RFK has been on Joe Rogan's show. Hey, let's sit down and have a conversation, right? But Dr. Peter Hotez, like a lot of these leftists who claim that the science is on their side, right? They're pro-science, except they never actually want to debate the science, okay? When the science is being challenged, they don't want to debate the science. And it seems to me that Dr. Peter Hotez doesn't want to debate the science, despite being a scientist who claims that the science is on his side. Again, familiar story here, okay? The left don't want to debate ideas. They don't want to be challenged, okay? But because Dr. Peter Hotez basically refuses to debate, he got a lot of backlash on Twitter, mainly from people like Elon Musk, okay, who, along with other tech billionaires, like, for example, Bill Ackman, I guess he's more of an investor, okay, a hedge fund manager. But there's a ton of other people on Twitter who got together and created a jackpot and saying, look, bro, we will give you millions of dollars, right? We'll give you millions of dollars to debate RFK Jr. on vaccines because we just want to hear this debate. We want to hear it, right? We want to hear both sides of the aisle on this issue, right? But again, apparently that's controversial to the left, okay? And again, it got so controversial that at some point somebody showed up to Dr. Peter Hotez's house to basically try to convince him to debate, which also triggered people on the left.
We need to talk about this right fucking now. Right fucking now. Dr. Peter Hotez was walking out front of his home in Houston, and this happened.
Okay. Oh, are you Peter Hotez?
I am. Hi.
Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Hey. So why are you not like going to debate RFK on Joe Rogan's podcast?
Oh, come on. That's harassing.
I'm just curious.
What?
No, nothing hostile, just curious.
I haven't said anything one way or the other.
I mean, are you planning on doing it?
He just invited me, so we'll see.
And I think you should, though.
Yeah, so I don't think that people should be showing up to people's houses asking them to debate. I don't think that that's the move. But regardless, again, that's the controversy, okay? That's the controversy. That's what's happening here. And that leads me to this video that I want to react to, which is between Mehdi Hassan and Peter Hotez, okay? Because Peter Hotez can't go on Joe Rogan to talk to RFK, but he can go to a safe space of MSNBC that is basically going to tell him that he should not engage in a debate with RFK Jr. because RFK Jr. is a crackpot who's not worth debating. Despite the fact that these people claim that RFK Jr. is so dangerous, right? They don't feel like his opinion should actually be challenged, right? No. Don't challenge his opinions. Don't actually come to the debate with scientific evidence that you claim that you have on your side. No. We should just censor him instead, right? So nobody hears what he has to say. Again, these people are such authoritarians. It's amazing how they don't see it. So, anyways, I want to react to this interview, but before I get in there, I just want to let you guys know, if you like my channel and you want to support my channel, you can check out my new merch. For example, like my black edition of my signature racist mug, which is a daily reminder of the 2023 definition of racist, according to the left, which is anybody who disagrees with the Democrat Party. It also has my logo on the back. You can check that out at my website, gforemanbcp.com. You can get 20% off using discount code TEAMBCP. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Contrary to what RFK Jr. and other anti-vax nuts have claimed, there is no connection between vaccines and autism, no connection, no established documented connection between vaccines and serious diseases or mass death. Vaccines tend to save lives across the board, do they not? That's what the peer-reviewed evidence overwhelmingly shows, does it not? And people are dying right now from COVID still because the evidence on COVID vaccines' efficacy is being ignored or shouted down on social media.
Okay, so if that's the case, it should be very easy, right? If it's as clear-cut as Mehdi Hassan is saying, and I'm not saying it's not, I don't know, right? I'm one of these people who need to be educated, okay? And I want to be educated. I want to be educated on both sides, okay, of the science. But if it's that clear-cut, I don't understand what problem does MSNBC have with engaging in debate and conversation if you know that all the facts and evidence in the studies, the peer-reviewed studies, are on your side. I'm just saying, right? I'm just saying, I don't understand what the problem is.
Well, there's three or four moving parts to this. So I'm a vaccine scientist. I make low-cost patent-free vaccines for low and middle-income countries. We made 100 million doses we made 2 vaccine prototypes that led to 100 million doses being administered in India and Indonesia, no patents, minimal strings attached. So we actually found a way to bypass the pharma companies, and yet RFK Jr. incessantly calls me a pharma shill when, if anything, our vaccines maybe kept Pfizer and Moderna out of markets in India and in Indonesia. So I don't understand that piece. And then but
you still get rich, right? These vaccines don't make themselves. This guy, again, this is so disingenuous, right? He's pretending like he doesn't have an incentive, a financial incentive to make these vaccines. Like, do you really want us to believe that you are making these vaccines out of the kindness of your heart, right? And that you're only doing it because, hey, you don't want to see people get sick and die, and that there's no financial incentive at all, okay? Like, who's paying for these low-cost, patent-free vaccines, right? Who's paying for them? Somebody's paying for them. They're not being made for free, right? You're getting paid, right? You're getting rich, okay? I mean, just because you're not taking money from Pfizer or Moderna or Johnson & Johnson doesn't mean that you're not a part of Big Pharma, right? Or you're not a part of the pharmaceutical industry. Just because you're not working with the big guys, right? Just because you're independent, that doesn't mean that you're not a part of it. You are a part of it. And I'm not even saying that like that's a bad thing. I just don't like how this guy tries to say, well, I'm not a pharma shield because I am not taking money from Moderna or, Johnson & Johnson or whatever. I'm making low-cost, patent-free vaccines for all these third-world countries. And I'm like, okay, well, who's paying for that, right? Are you getting paid for that? Yes, you are, right? So don't sit and try to pretend like you don't have some type of financial incentive in regards to, pushing these vaccines, because you do, just like all the other pharmaceutical companies do. You just have a different market, right? You're just doing it differently.
And I got involved with RFK Jr. in the first place is I have an adult daughter, Rachel, who has autism and intellectual disabilities, and wrote the book Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, that refuted all of his false claims. And that's been, he's been kind of after me ever since then.
Yeah, so again, if that's the case, right, you wrote a whole book refuting the guy's claims, right? You should be very well versed in his arguments, and I get it. Everybody's not a great debater, right? Debating is a skill, and I get it. This guy may not feel comfortable actually debating RFK, but here's the thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a debate like what you see on TV, where it's more about who can get in the best lines and rebuttals. It's a conversation, right? Between you, Joe Rogan, and RFK, and I'm confident that Joe Rogan will keep it a conversation, right? And in a conversation type format, I don't see why you would be so uncomfortable discussing something that, one, you do for a living, right? So you're very well aware of your own work and, the studies that you use to support your work. You wrote a whole book refuting this guy's claims, okay? Claims that you say are false. I don't understand, right? If you have this much knowledge, I don't understand how you can't confidently walk into a room and have a conversation with a guy that you're claiming is a crackpot, right? Again, RFK Jr. is not a scientist, okay? He's not a scientist. You're a scientist. You're a vaccine doctor. I don't understand. I don't understand what is really the hesitancy in regards to having a conversation. I don't get it, especially when you got unlimited time. So you got unlimited time. Again, it's not like you're pressured to try to get in your points before the clock stops. You that's the most comfortable format possible. I don't get it.
And now he's at it again. But this time, Elon, I'm sorry, this time, Eddie, it's
yeah, Elon Musk living in this guy's head rent free, bro. Right? Called him Elon. Call Mehdi Hassan Elon.
Caused something really terrible, and that is during our COVID pandemic. I have a new book coming out that basically says 200,000 Americans needlessly perished because they believe the anti-vaccine disinformation.
And clearly, right, since you wrote a whole book on it, you must have the proper citations, you must have the proper sources to back up these claims. Again, if you wrote a whole book on it, you should be very familiar and very well versed in all this stuff. I don't understand why you wouldn't have a conversation with a guy that you claim, again, is a crackpot. His beliefs are not based in science. So I'm trying to figure out what is the problem. Okay, I don't get it.
And refused to take a COVID vaccine during our Delta wave and BA1 Omicron wave in 2021-22 after vaccines were widely available. So the point is, anti-vaccine disinformation, it's always done a lot of damage and harm, but now it's a lethal force in the United States. And that's why we have to have that discussion. And I offered to come and go on Joe Rogan again. I've been on a couple of times and have that discussion with him, but not to turn it into the Jerry Springer show with having RFK Jr. on.
Oh, see, here we go. Again, he wants to be able to have a discussion with Joe Rogan, who's not going to be able to push back as much as somebody like RFK Jr., who's probably going to be more familiar with this subject, right? Again, he's trying to discredit RFK Jr. and say, well, he's not somebody worth me sitting down and having a conversation with. But you're also claiming that the guy is costing people their lives. That, again, his claims and the things he says are responsible for hundreds of thousands of people dying. If you make a claim like that, then you would think at the very least you'd be willing to have a conversation with the guy to back up that claim. But again, they don't want to do that, right? He doesn't want to do that for whatever reason.
Well, so it's sad because I said I'm so fed up with the debate me, because it's not really about the debate. If it was about finding out information, as you said, you've already written about vaccines and autism. You've already spoken and written about COVID vaccines. I think you've been on MSNBC and other channels hundreds of times since the start of the pandemic. People can hear your views and the evidence you bring to this. So they're not actually interested in evidence. And it saddens me that you're a man who basically has saved lives abroad with the vaccines you've developed, whereas RFK has contributed to a culture, a vaccine misinformation culture, that has led to the deaths, as you say, of hundreds of thousands of lives, and yet he's the one being celebrated by tech billionaires like Musk and Jack Dorsey, while you're being smeared and defamed.
Yeah, because of people like you who go out here and you smear people, and then you don't allow them to defend themselves. Right? It's one thing to smear him and to say, hey, yeah, he's a quack job or whatever. Fine. You have the freedom of speech to say that. But give him the freedom to defend himself, right? If you're going to make that type of claim, then why are you basically advocating that he doesn't have a platform to defend himself? Again, this is how the left wants it, right? They want to be able to freely say whatever they want about you. And they want to also, at the same time, advocate for big tech to censor the people that they're criticizing so that they can't defend themselves. That way, they control 100% of the narrative about a person. And that's just not fair. RFK Jr. is being praised because RFK Jr. represents somebody that is pro-free speech, okay? At least as far as I know, at least in 2023. Now, he said some controversial things in the past that are quite authoritarian, but I will hope that his opinions have changed. But I'm just saying, he's being praised because he is pushing back against this establishment push to censor people who don't want to go along with the narrative. If his opinions are wrong, then his opinions are wrong. But he should have a right to have those opinions, and he should be censored because he has those opinions. And people that speak out and say that his opinions are wrong and that he's killing folks, they should be required to back that up and defend it. The same way that RFK should be required to back up and defend the claims he's making that people claim are out here killing folks. But again, that's a foreign concept to the left. They don't accept that because they're authoritarians.
And I would say, I don't know if you've agreed to debate or not. My advice is not to, and people might find that surprising because I wrote a book about debate. But I just think there's a time and a place for a debate. I don't think a historian of World War II should debate a Holocaust denier. I just think, that's my analogy here. Like, I don't think these debates between experts and cranks do anything other than elevate the cranks.
Yeah, I mean, no, not really. Right. Not really, because if the crank is actually a crank, the world will be able to see it when he has a conversation with somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. If RFK Jr. is really a crank, right? But again, I think these people are afraid that RFK Jr. may bring some evidence and have a conversation that may change people's minds, that may make people question the official narrative. That's what they're afraid of. But more so what they're afraid of is RFK engaging in a debate with this guy where it gets millions and millions and millions and millions of views, and now people know who RFK Jr. is, and he becomes more of a threat to their Lord and Savior, Joe Biden, right? That's low-key what a lot of this stuff is about. It's about, well, we don't want to give this guy a bigger platform because, people will learn about him and they might agree with him, and, they may vote for him over Joe Biden, right? He's a threat to the establishment, and that's why you see all the powers that be coming after him the way that they are. Again, it's truly fascinating stuff to behold. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.